Welcome back to Home Teams Talk, where caring is the cause. I'm Shayla, president of the Bray Applications and co-creator of Home Teams, and I am here with Steve, our CEO and head coach, and as we like to call him, visionary. So we have a lot of really exciting things. If you didn't get a chance to join us for our last podcast, go ahead and go back and take a listen. We introduced what Home Teams was, our concept, and how caring came to be, and what we're going to be introducing in our podcasts. Before we jump in, why don't you give us some sunshine before we meet our guest and tell us some good news?
Well, a lot of the good news I always talk to you about is outside the medical world, but sometimes nowadays there's almost, man, it seems like weekly you hear of some new development. And the one that caught my eye this week was a new procedure. Get this, a new procedure that is a 1-hour procedure that basically, and it's interesting, they use frequencies. They're using electrical, it's actually more of a pulse. But anyway, long story short, 1-hour procedure, and 86% of the people do not need insulin anymore.
Wow.
So these guys are, insulin shots 3-4 times a day. It's like it'd be a game changer for
life-changing.
diabetes. Yeah, for everybody. And they use it kind of in concert with semaglutide, which is being so effective. And for a while they thought it was the semaglutide that was doing it, but when they put someone on semaglutide, it's like 22% of the people don't need insulin anymore. So that's really phenomenal.
Yeah.
But with this procedure, it goes to 86%.
So for people who don't know, what's semaglutide?
It's a peptide that it's what you hear out there, Ozempic and Wegovy, whatever it's called. Those are all based on semaglutide, kind of different mixtures of it, different strength levels or whatever. So it's a phenomenal. Someday we'll talk about that. It's phenomenal. It was actually developed for the brain and what it does with the brain and how it's affecting even, like, believe it or not, like gambling addictions and alcohol addictions, even shopping addictions. It's so much a bigger world for semaglutide than it is, and peptides in general, than what we're hearing now. But it's kind of the cutting edge. So yeah, that's phenomenal, and lives are changing off of semaglutide. As you know, even in our organization, we have people who have lost 60, 70, 100 pounds, and it's phenomenal, especially in concert with our program that allows you to make your lifestyle changes and get your metabolism going while you're going through the therapy. But something like this, where it's 1-hour procedure, and that's what's so neat about some of the things that I read like that, is that you get so excited about it, and maybe it's still a year off or 2 years off, but they're coming down the pipe everywhere. Everywhere you turn, there's really, really good news about things going on in the medical world.
It is, I think, an impressive thing with technology. We talk about this all the time, how much that has increased. I mean, it's expanded the medical industry, especially with what technology can do. I mean, artificial intelligence and things like that.
Yeah, and it's like the speed of change right now. I mean, you think back when all of a sudden they start talking about this thing called the internet, and you're like, wait, what? What's this going to be able to do? And I go back to when we used to fax, the old fax machines, and you'd send a DHL package and you'd wait for like 4 days for the person to get it. And that was fast. We're like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then, of course, the internet, all of a sudden these emails back and forth and everything that could take place and all the access to knowledge. But you take all that internet and the changes that happen in the internet, it's really not even comparable to what's happening right now between augmented reality and artificial intelligence and the things that are coming on. It's going to be the speed of how it's affecting the medical world is going to be unprecedented.
Oh, awesome. I love it. Thanks for the sunshine. I love the good news.
It's fun.
So on today's episode, we have Ramiro Alvarez, and he's one of our regenerative training coaches and client advocates here at the Pacific Clinic, which is our main campus. Thanks for joining us today, Ramiro. It's really great to have you here. You started out as kind of a client with us, and we've got to see you grow in your role, and you get to care for others, which is one of our pillars we talked about last time. So I'm excited to get into your story. In today's episode, we'll talk about the 7 essential elements and how that kind of played a part in your life and how it's affecting other clients here that you work with. So let's get into it. So Ramiro, how did you find us?
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here. How did I find you? Through a lot of pain and struggle. Pretty much the same way that people come. Now the opportunity that I get to sit in front of people, that's usually the first question that I ask, like, how did you find us? Why are you here? And it's as we get through the conversation, it doesn't take long for me to get to the point where I get to tell them the reason I'm here is because I was once sitting in your chair. I was once you. I was once just as broken, just as afraid, just as exhausted, just as tired, just as worn out as you were, and that's usually how people find you. So I reached out to a friend, happened to be at a meeting, and they did a presentation, and I was doing a lot of research on my own, YouTube, just looking for ways, turning every stone, and just trying to figure out a way to overcome the issues I was going through. And a friend in a presentation said, "Hey, there's this great facility that has all this technology that's doing all this stuff," and it's like, whoa, that's pretty cool. And it was stuff that to me seemed out of this world. Like, Tri-Cities isn't going to have this. This little town isn't going to have this. And so walking out of that meeting, I hunted him down in the parking lot, and I was like, "Hey, I know I'm not anybody, nothing special, but if there's any possibility, I'd be willing to talk to these people and see if they'd sponsor me to do a race. I'm not a professional runner, nothing special again, but maybe there's some exchange that we can do." And it was Mr. Carl Cadwell, and he was like, "You know what? Let me talk to Steve. Let me see what's going on, and we'll kick it around." And then a couple of days later, I get a call, "Come on down. Let's do this." So I got the opportunity to start training, and that's really where everything began.
I remember when Steve kind of introduced you, and I went, "He's doing how many miles?" Now, how many miles was it? It was like 100 or something, wasn't it?
The original race I had signed up for was a 100-mile race. I didn't finish the race. Didn't finish the 100 miles. I finished 50 miles. The thing
Impressive.
Well, it is considering where I was. Like, I'm not a runner. I joke around now, even that, I tell people I'm like the bumblebee of the running world. The scientists can't figure out how a bumblebee can fly aerodynamically. It doesn't make sense. So when I'm tumbling down, it's like, I know that people are going like, "This guy's running that far," but
haven't you lost like 80 pounds too through your process?
I did. So part of it, I mean, it wasn't the race was just the output of all the input, of all the years, of all the suffering. I didn't start wanting to run. I didn't start because I was like, "Oh, I want to do this thing." I started because I was just so exhausted. And one night, I just couldn't figure anything out. And I knew that being at home, that monster inside was taking over everything. And I just couldn't control it anymore. And out of fear, frustration, I walked outside. And as I'm walking out, I remember I had the urge to grab my phone and I was going to say something. And I just started recording. And for whatever reason, as soon as I hit play, I just broke down. And I'm walking and like tears are flooding through. And I didn't stop recording. And I still have the video, but I just remember all the pain and all the suffering. And it was like, in the military, they teach you how to bottle everything up. They teach you how to package everything and make sure that it's airtight and make sure nothing leaks and you're able to continue to perform. And after years of just bottling this stuff up, finally one of those barrels broke. And it, just like nuclear waste, one broke another. And once it started coming out, I just couldn't hold it back anymore. And so that walk, after that, I just didn't want to come home. And I didn't want to come home that way. And so I just figured whatever direction I go, eventually I got to come back, and a block turned into a mile, and a mile turned into 5, and 5 turned into 10. And I just knew that pain that I felt in my body and my legs was greater than the pain that I felt in my heart. And it was like, okay, so today the monster doesn't get to come out because the monster's tired and he's beat up. And it was like, and that just started the journey.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah. I like that perspective on that. So you kind of touched on it a little bit. You mentioned how when you are working with clients, you say, "I was you. I can be in that." So how has the program changed you?
I'll say that, from the original podcast, so after the race, I got the invitation to come back and kind of share the story. I believe we still have the podcast up there. It's been 22 months since then. And during that conversation, Steve challenged me. Because I didn't finish the race, I wasn't prepared, didn't have any idea what I was getting into. Ignorance is bliss. I was like, it's easy. I can do that. I'm watching David Goggins, like, "You can do it, I can do it." Like, no, it's a long way to get to that.
Just a few less F-bombs.
A lot of F-bombs. But during that conversation, the thing that Steve challenged me with, he was like, "You know what was missing? Why you didn't finish that race? Because you were missing the one key ingredient, which was purpose." And he said, "How about next time you run But instead of running for yourself and running to get away from something, you run towards something, and you run because of something, and something that's inspiring you, something that's motivating you, that's greater beyond who you are and what you do. And that kind of struck with me when he said that. I was like, ah, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it. I've since then ran the race again, another 50 miles. Um, but what I'm doing now, you know, it's a cheesy line to say, oh, I love my job, I this and that. It was like I was resistant to take this job. I didn't think I could do it. I knew that I was good at talking to people. I didn't have a problem with that, but I didn't think I could sit in front of somebody that was just as broken as I was and have that conversation. And I didn't think I was capable of really helping them do that. But because of the program and because of understanding what we're really looking for, the same story with Steve, I'm sure you shared with it before. What he needed was somebody to believe in him and somebody just to hold on to the hope. And the reality is that is what I now do for people. When we're having a conversation, all I'm saying is like, look, I believe that there is a possibility, and I believe that there is hope. And Steve says it all the time. We're not the experts, but if you're willing to fight, we'll fight with you. And as long as you believe, we believe. And if you don't believe, trust in my faith that we can do it. And now that purpose, that mission, it's expanded so much that now it's a conversation like this day to day, and I love it. I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way.
I think that, one of the perspectives you kind of bring up there, which relates to home teams in a way, in a lot of ways, is that, for you to start caring for, because now, you're being very humble. Now you're one of the best I've ever seen at getting in a person's head and really residing in there with them, actually helping them on not just like a daily basis, but on a thought by thought basis. But to get there, you first trained. You actually, I remember when you first started training here and how hard you started going through our program and really engaging in our whole 7 elements and all the stuff that we talk about. But it's the same way with a caregiver. A caregiver, so many times when you find out your wife has cancer or you find out your husband's struggling with Alzheimer's or whatever it is, you think, okay, they got to get ready or they're going to have a real battle. But what they don't realize is that so are you. Mm-hmm. And frankly, if you're going to be a great caregiver to that person, when you get that news, or maybe way before you get that news, you should be preparing to care for other people. And to care for other people, you got to put on your own oxygen mask first, So you start by getting your personality centered around the task at hand, like you said, purpose, but also just centered around the fact that I want to care. We say caring is the cause. I want to be physically, emotionally, spiritually in a position that I can care for other people. So you start there, right? And in a way, that's your training. And we actually go into the whole physical training for caregivers, but emotionally and spiritually as well. And so I look at you, you're a perfect example because you came in, like you said, you didn't even want to be a coach, you wanted to do other things. I had to talk you into that. But you came in, you were going to be the perfect coach, but you started by getting yourself together. And I think that's a big insight for a lot of people that are facing hard times as a caregiver, not just a person fighting the disease.
I think that's a good segue into why the 7 essential elements were created, though. Because I remember you and I sitting down, and you always have these, again, I said, you're the visionary, right? You had this amazing idea where you thought, okay, how can we help? Let's put it together. And I remember we came up with, okay, it's 6. There's 6 things that we need to have. Remember, we were like sitting up there, and you love this chalkboard, right? It's always in front of a chalkboard. You're up there, scratching on the chalkboard, and I get here one of the mornings, like, listen, I came up with it. This is what we're going to do. These are the 6 things. And you run through them, and you're like, this is what they're going to be. And I'm like, okay, that sounds good. Let's do it. And then we sat there, and you went, no, it's 7. And you kind of touched on it, which, to kind of give everyone an introduction on that, what we believe are, what we think the basics, right? There's a lot of things that kind of branch off of it, but the 7 basics we think are thought, breathing, movement, atmosphere, nutrition, sleep, and then that 7th one that you were like, this is the final piece, is that purpose, which Ramiro, you mentioned. And I think it's important to kind of dive into why did we pick those 7? And you're very particular about the order of the 7, which we tweaked and changed, but let's kind of dive into that a little bit. Why thought first?
Well, so it started, like when you and I were doing that, we were trying to bring back up what I had gone through and what worked for me. It's like, you know, all the time I was trying to get better, and I still fight to get better today. Everybody always wanted to know what the hack was. What's the one thing that made it happen? You know, it was that one therapy, wasn't it? You know, especially when you're talking to the experts that own the therapy or invested their life in that therapy, they'll say what they do is it. But what I found is that, like I've said before, it came to stacking those therapies, and it came to all of it. There was no like, okay, I'm going to go work out for an hour and that's going to make me better. You know, matter of fact, like I've said before, you actually have what they call a metabolic bounce back when you go to work out. You actually don't get as much effect as you think unless you're doing the rest of the day. You have to convince your body to inhabit the change, not just try to change. And so we looked at all those things, and yeah, so we broke down. So what I like to do is break it down by, and I think there's a real important to understand the order, and thought is the first one. And the reason is because what do you do most in a day? It's like you would think, breathe, you know, you come with a lot of different things that you say, but thinking, you know, they say, I've seen research says that you think somewhere between 12 and 40,000 thoughts a day. Whatever the number is, it's huge. And you know, I like to think of it as this is how, you know, again, in my kind of cartoon brain, it's like, if I was sitting here, you know what I hate the most in plants is, what do they call them, goose heads?
Oh, goat heads.
Goat
You've
heads.
never
I always
said
say
it right.
See, I don't even like the name. But the goat heads, right? If I take, and all day long I'm planting goat heads with thoughts, meaning a negative thought, and they're spiky and they're hard and you can't ever get rid of them. I mean, it's so hard to get rid of them, right? If you're sitting there and planting those in your thoughts all day long, these bad thoughts, times 12,000, and you sit there and we talk about how much your thought process affects your physicality, your emotions, everything, and you're like, I don't know why I'm the way I am. You've planted a lot of goat heads. There's a ton of them, right? And how do you get those out? Is, well, we have different therapies and things that you do and different modalities and treatments, but the main thing is to start planting good, you know, bushes. And the fact is they sit there and start, if all day long you're planting beautiful roses and beautiful flowers and things that create oxygen and, you know, these wonderful plants that are out there, if you're planting those all day long, it doesn't take a lot of days. And people talk about it takes 21 days to change a habit, or you hear these different numbers. It's probably more like 6 to 12 months, not 21 days. I know that. They say, well, every cell in your body is replaced every 21 days, but it's replaced with the same type of cell. It doesn't change that fast. So it takes a lot of planting. But when you're sitting there planting, every thought, so I like to say, if you start out, and you won't be able to do it, you start out and say, I'm going to think positive, I'm going to think productively about every thought. You can't do it. I mean, it's hard to do. But as you start to do more of it and more of it, it becomes easier and it becomes more like exponential almost, because now the next thought comes easier to be positive or to be creative or to be productive, and they start to change that whole field, if you will, in your brain. And I don't know how you get rid of the goat heads. No, anyway.
They eventually get taken over by the roses. I know that's true.
They do. So the fact is that that's why thought's so important, is because you're doing it all day. So every time, if I'm drinking water, if I'm sitting there thinking, I want to have this water, and I'm literally starting that thought with how good water is for me, not just because I'm thirsty, but how good that water is for me. And you're actually processing the thought to think why it's productive. Why am I going to do this workout? Why am I going to breathe deeper? Why am I going to eat this good food? Why am I going to smile at that person when they walk by? Why am I going to help? And all of a sudden you're asking yourself these whys, and you're answering with positive reasons why I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And you start to live on purpose. You know, it has to start with those thoughts. So what happens with most of us, especially if you're sick or you've been through tough times, is that you just start letting everything else be planted in you, all these goat heads. Everybody's got something of why it's negative, you know, and they're looking at, you know, the whole half full type thing. But the fact is that we just let life come at us. At every section, it's just like, that guy's going to determine whether I'm going to have a good day. Wait, what?
Yeah.
I'm that, this bad thing that they consider bad is happening. Also, you're turning going, okay, what am I learning from this? What am I going to learn from this lesson today and this tough thing that I'm facing? So instead of looking at things as bad, you start looking at as challenges. And every challenge you're facing is a way to get better. And so even things that are rough, you're like, okay, here we go. This is a great challenge.
Yeah.
So you start turning and turning and turning. And at 12 to 40,000 times a day for 6, 8, 10 months, and all of a sudden you are that change. You've changed how you process things versus just setting a goal of getting to some place.
Yeah. All right, our second one. I love the saying that you say with this one, breathing.
Breathing.
Yeah. Come to find out.
Come to find out, breathing's good for you. Well, it's so interesting with breathing because breathing is second. I mean, you can make an argument maybe that atmosphere is second, but anyway, breathing's second. You breathe a lot, and if you're breathing healthy, you're probably breathing about 6 times a minute. Full breath. Not very many people do that. You're probably more like 14. But anyway, it's a lot of breathing, and that oxygen, that gets into our system, it's a process. It's like everybody seems to. Most people ventilate fine. You watch the guy that's a little overweight and he's walking up the stairs and he's like, and he goes, man, I can't breathe. No, dude, you're breathing just fine. You're ventilating just fine. But the difference is getting that oxygen to perfuse into the tissue and perfuse into the tissue, and that exchange of the 2 atoms, oxygen to the 3 CO2, that exchange is everything for our health of our bodies. So in reality, the CO2 is probably more important than that, really. But I mean, if you can make a case for it, because you get the oxygen in, but it's the CO2 that basically taps the oxygen on the shoulder and says, hey, we got it from here, and you can go into the tissue and be fruitful and multiply. We'll take it, and then CO2 comes out, which a lot of people don't understand is that there's a lot of research about the fact that about 80% of your calories are actually expelled out your lungs. We think that we always say we burn calories, and the truth is you can't change, maybe Pacific Northwest Labs could figure out how to do that, but the fact is you can't, right? So it's really expelling it, and over 80% of it's expelled out of our lungs. So that exchange that goes on there, as we get older and when we're sick, we're not making that exchange anymore. When you're a kid, we go play tag or whatever, you're running as fast as you can, you stop, you're like, okay, go. You take off, right? Your recovery is so quick because that exchange is taking place so well. We get older, that exchange isn't happening. And as you know, with some of the people that come into to Regenerative, you put them on our high altitude training machine, and you'll see they won't drop. They don't have any. Their CO2 is not, or the oxygen is not releasing. It's not being used in the system, and so the oxygen levels don't drop. And then after they start getting more in shape, their body starts to learn that process again. And we teach it in just breathing techniques of how to do it. But you start getting that exchange, all of a sudden, your brain thinks clearer. You can start creating. One test I saw is like you can create as much as 25% more oxygen going to the brain. And I like to think of it as like the OxyFresh commercial. It's like you pour the wine on the on the rug, and then he puts OxyFresh on and it cleans it. Same with the brain. You get oxygen in there. Injuries, wherever you have scar tissue, all these things are going in your system. To clean out your system, to get your system to be healthy, you got to have the oxygen go into the tissue, not just down the pipe.
Well, and I think people often don't understand too how amazing the human body is. It's designed to have that exchange happen for that natural healing purpose. It's pretty amazing.
And that's part of even with the coaching part, even just those 2 parts. When we're doing the oxygen therapy, the oxygen contrast, we've had clients that have come in and they have plenty of money, and it's like, oh, I can buy this equipment, I'll take it home, and they set it up in the garage, and then 3 or 4 months later they're coming back and going, hey, why can't I do what you guys are doing here? Well, because what we're doing here is that other part, which is the coaching part, and literally what we're triggering is the thought. Like, you can't do one without the other. If you're just breathing, if you're just huffing and puffing, I mean, it's just happening. It's just like the thought. If thoughts are just flowing through your head, it's just happening. It's happening to you, and it's not happening for you. And if I have no control, it's one thing for me to be planning go-aheads throughout, but what if I'm just have a wide open field and somebody else is planting go-aheads, and I have no way to stop that. And so while we're doing that therapy, one of the things that we coach them is, I had a gentleman that was like, hey, will this get easier later on? Is this ever gonna not be hard? And I asked him, do you really want it to be easy? Like, what is it you're looking for? He's like, well, it's just I want to be better at it. I'm like, well, in that case, you have to be better. You have to be harder. You have to be able to change it. And the one thing that you can do from here on out is stop resisting it. It just is. It's going to be what it is. And until your body can do what it needs to do, you just have to be okay with it. And as we're coaching them, we're guiding them through the process. The one thing that continues to happen is they start, that amygdala fires up, they start getting nervous, they start getting scared, and they start to, not in a negative, but all those negative, oh, am I going to be okay? Is this going to happen? And that's where we're able to calm them down and go, you chose this. Your body's healing. This is a process that you have to go through. If you can face this in your mind and you can accept this happening in your body and you can relax through this, the process will take care of itself. And it's like you see that calmness come through, and all of a sudden the acceptance, and it's like, all of a sudden you see the magic. They drop, and it's like, it just happened like that. But their thought along with the intention is what really gets the result.
The intention, there you go.
I like that word.
And the thing that you just brought up, and so relating this to home teams, so obviously we're kind of the lab here at Pacific Clinic, but related to home teams is that you brought up the coaching. And the fact is like, we weren't meant to be islands. We really are meant to be a team. And that's something I truly believe, and I think it proves all the time. But a person out there, an orphan elder living in a home by themselves, and they're trying to retain their health if they can, but they're all alone. When you have a team, you have a coach, you have mentors, you have friends, you have people that are on purpose trying to help you, not just because, well, shoot, I guess I need to go over to grandma's house. But no, I have some things I want to do to help her. In the library of home teams, you have these videos of what we do here, and we found, and this was really cool for me, is that we found we can do it almost as good as we can with our machines, especially once they learn how to do it. But we've watched it with elderly people that were not supposed to be alive, who stayed alive a long time, and their oxygen levels when they started were at like 90, 89. Not good. Are already in hypoxia, area. And then all of a sudden they're going down the toughest battle in their life, but because they've been doing these breathing programs and the things that we teach, which is like 15 minutes a day, it's nothing that hard to do, and then learning how to continue to do it through the day. But all of a sudden these guys are at 97, 98, and the doctors are going, I don't know what to tell you because she's 90 years old, and she's got all these problems, all these things are wrong, but her oxygen level's at 98. And so therefore she's still thinking clearly and she's still able to perform when she shouldn't be. We get that not once, but not twice, it's been many times. So that mentoring, that coaching, to be able to go out and take what we have and actually apply it at those individual homes and stuff is, I think, the neatest part of what we've discovered in our little lab.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good segue into our next one, which is atmosphere, which I consider, there's like 3 components of it, right? We just kind of discussed that when we were putting it together. And you kind of covered the main one, which is the atmosphere, which in my opinion is who you're around and where you're at with those people. So you just said being at the home, the atmosphere is who I put in my life, right? That's one component. But you also have a couple other ideas of atmosphere.
Yeah, it's like, that's where we'd struggle on how to categorize these, because there's almost 2 types of atmosphere, but it's really this one and the same in many ways. So let's start with more the physical part of it. And the physical part of it is you got to get outside. Even with some of our elderly people that we take care of, we get them outside. It's not that, it's not a major effort to get them down to the end of the driveway and sit out there in the sun or even in the cold, bundling them up, getting them outside. There's amazing things that take place by getting outside. I like to say you get photobombed because you're getting the photons from all over hitting you, and we teach them, what we've learned from like Huberman and some of those people like that about the fact that you do it first thing in the morning. For me, it's right after sunrise. I take my morning walk. But it can be up, according to him, up to like 10 o'clock in the morning. You're getting photobombed correctly. You're getting a lot of photobomb. And you go out there and we tell people minimum, and it sounds crazy, minimum like 2 to 3 minutes. but we prefer 10 to 30 minutes. The difference that's made in elderly people's lives is, and in my life, of course, I'm kind of elderly too, but it makes a huge difference in how it, like you said, it's like we teach them to walk forward, to look big. You don't look big when you're scared. I mean, if I was going to be aggressive towards Ramiro right now, his eyes would focus on me. That's that fight or flight syndrome. But a lot of us are stuck in that. When you learn to walk and look big and just see God's world, this beautiful big world, and see that bird flying over and feeling the topography underneath your feet and just walking. It's not trying to get in shape right now. But what happens is, according to humans, there's like a click in the amygdala that says, hey, I guess I'm okay. And it kind of calms down. And it sets your circadian rhythm for the night. So that's a really important fact to get outside. You know, I can go on and on about all the neat things that happen, but you want to just generalize and sum it up. Get outside. And, you know, preferably a couple hours a day. But 2 minutes, 10 minutes, just get something done and get outside can make a huge difference. So that's one part of atmosphere. Is just, you know, we live in a 75-degree world. You know, I start my truck before I got in my truck to make sure it's already warm. I come in my office, I want it at 75 or whatever it is, right? We live in this world, and it affects, and I haven't seen a ton of research on this, but it affects our immune system. I would love to see somebody do research and prove that even more so, but it's so obvious. It's just empirically obvious when you're doing it yourself, the difference. To get outside and let yourself be cold, let yourself be hot. Get this overall challenging of the body. When we don't challenge our body at all, it's like our microbiome, our immune system, everything just goes back to whatever we need. If I sit here and I hold my head straight and I sit here for like 10 hours, what do you think happens when I go like that? It's like, oh, ow, right? Because your body goes, oh, I guess he wants to hold it straight. Let's try to keep his head straight. If you wear a brace for like 4 or 5 days and then figure out, or let's say an arm, you know, end of the day, our body adapts to what we ask it to do. So we're never asking it to be hot, never asking it to be cold. We're never asking it to deal with wind, which I don't like wind, but deal with wind, deal with the different
You're living in the wrong place if you don't like wind.
But in our bodies being challenged, our immune system, our microbiome, our everything gets better. So that's the atmosphere. It's a huge thing. We can go on, like we have a whole show on how important that is. Yeah. And then you bring up the other side of the atmosphere. Is that, just like we're talking about thought, it's like it's hard when you're constantly getting bombed, not photobombed in a good way, but getting bombed by people who are bringing you down, who are trying to, you know, constantly tell you what you're doing wrong, not what you're doing right, and constantly looking at everything with fear. They just, you know, there's just fear mongers in our society. There's just fear mongers everywhere. And so that atmosphere of being surrounded by people that are negative. So when you're on your home team, you're building your home team, you want to build it and have people who are going to be uplifting. And uplifting is not a huge thing. So here's another kind of atmospheric insight, if you will, is that, you know, we think, well, how would I be positive? I'm going to go there and sing her a song, you know, to this old lady. That'd be great. I'm going to tell her this incredible story I read. The first thing is listen. Just shut up and listen. In our society right now, we don't listen at all. And you go to take care of an elderly person, you know, Dr. Mobley down at UCSD said that the average doctor listens to a person for 17 seconds before they interrupt. The person doesn't feel listened to, right? And they don't feel like the doctor understands what they're doing. But the doctor only needed to wait 47 seconds to the person to feel like they're heard. I like that little scenario because it's kind of the same. You go to listen to the senior. That senior might tell you the same story that they told you yesterday. But listen. Sometimes they're telling it because there's one little insight they wanted you to really pick up on, or one little insight that's really sitting in their heart really strong, and it's deeper than just the story. Just listen. But that atmosphere that you're creating for that person by listening, that atmosphere of not trying to, you know, overwhelm them, just be there, be present. You personally can be an atmosphere for people that's positive.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting because I've been on that side where I'm the one going to somebody's house, and I still relate it back to the first point you made, which is thought. And I'm sure you deal with this regularly when you go in there. You have to like mentally, I may be exhausted. I may have had a horrible night's sleep, or my day has just been horrible. But the second I walk in, and I've seen you do this, as soon as I hit that threshold, it's now my thought has changed. I'm here to change and be the positive atmosphere for that person. And so I'm able to not just tie my own personal, I can now project that.
Project it.
And doing it in a positive way is huge.
Yeah, it's huge. I go back to when Sharmila was really sick. Something I saw her doing, I was just like, I mean, you know, she was fighting cancer for 12 years, and she was had a half a lung left, and it was just really a tough time. But she created her atmosphere, and it was atmosphere to help other people. She didn't go to chemo. She went to the spa. She wouldn't, didn't want to hear chemo, and it was because it was going to heal her. She had this is going to make me better. Everything was like that. She created her own atmosphere, and every single person, she'd walk in and you watch every nurse, every janitor. She'd know their janitor's name, and the janitor would be like, "Hey, Sharmila," there's like, she projected so much that it projected back at her, right? Just all of a sudden she created this environment around her that became real positive. And she took the time, like, so one time I was watching her, we were walking out, and she stopped. This is when she could still walk at the time. She stopped at the door and she paused. She stood there, just leaving the hospital, leaving chemo. She stopped, and then she kind of took a big deep breath, and then she opened the door and walked out. And I said, so I got in the car and I said, "What was that at the door?" And she goes, "Oh, well, I tell myself that I'm there at the spa to get my treatments to get better, and I'm fighting cancer with everything I've got. When I hit that door, I don't have cancer anymore." So that was her whole thing. It's like she'd stop, she'd pause, she'd say, I don't have cancer anymore. I'm going to go forward. And then, when she passed away, over half of her friends didn't even know she had cancer, because all she did was just live life to the fullest. But the fact is, what I'm trying to get at is she created her atmosphere around her, and I think that's a well taken lesson for all of us.
Yeah, agreed.
I think that's something, right? Everything that you're saying right now, and these stories that you're sharing, especially with Ms. Sharmila, I mean, the fact that she had the insight to do this. I mean, most people, we don't have this training. Like, our education system, whatever the system that's supposed to allow us to know this before we get out into the real world, like most of us to get to this point stumble upon it if you're lucky. I don't know how she discovered this, but she was doing this intentionally. And as I'm listening through these, I'm relating them back to my story, environment. I didn't know that going outside was going to heal me. I didn't know that. All I knew that I would go far enough, so far that nobody else was around, and I would stop at a point and look around and go, God made this for me. He made this for me. I'm the only one here. He must have made it for me. So if nobody cares about me, if nobody worries about me, if nobody's going to ask me what's going on with me, God cares so much about me that he made all of this for me. And I would just stand there and go, how blessed am I? How lucky am I?
Right.
And no matter what, everything else, the pain in my body was like, that was my sacrifice and the pain that I had to go through just to experience that moment. But I didn't know that. If I would have known that, like, maybe I would have done it sooner. But now I know, like, I want that feeling. Not the feeling of I did it, but the feeling of reminding and being present and going, God made this for me. I am something, I am worth this. So it's great that we have this and we're able to package it as this is the way we can learn this and understand this. But the sad part, like you said, the caring, creating environment, we have a world and a society that isn't equipped with this. Hey, now you're going to be a caregiver, from one day to the next, just like that. You're living life this way and now it's going to be this way. I'm not ready. I can't do this. How am I going to do this? So to be able to get this type of information and knowing that there's people out there that are teaching this, I mean, to me, that's going to change the game for a lot of people.
It's awesome.
So these next three, I think, are pretty easy. I mean, most people would understand when you kind of break it down, which is the movement, the nutrition, the sleep. And so I think our idea was, let's just simplify it. Let's make it easy for people. So movement, I mean, what do we mean by movement? What are we talking about?
So movement is interesting. Again, it's kind of like a double-sided statement, because everyone thinks movement, you think getting up and moving, and that's very, very important. Like I said, you can go work out for an hour a day. By the time you're leaving, your body is going, okay, he's worked too hard. We got to preserve calories, and all of a sudden, by the time you get to your car, you kind of reached to get your, to your radio. You start to slow down your body. So it's movement throughout the day. It's continuing to move. And if we do like, we teach quick sets, and we teach, or some people call it like snacks, but it's these quick workouts, full muscles. And this is how people start to lose weight. Because what happens is the body continues to move throughout the day. We tell them to get, 2-3 miles a day of walking, which is not that hard if you break it up. But movement throughout the day, all of a sudden the body starts to say, oh, I guess he wants to use these calories. I guess he wants to do this. He says we're safe, let's do these things. And so that kind of movement is huge for your own health. So again, for a caregiver, you need to move. The person you're caring for, you need to help them move. Sometimes you have to help them move. But, we've done it, again, with people who weren't supposed to be able to be weight bearing anymore. And all of a sudden, the next week they're walking down to the end of the driveway by just getting movement and challenging the body. So there's that kind of movement. Then there's the movement inside the body. We don't realize that we are stopping our movement all the time within our body. If I'm sitting like this and I sit here for 20 minutes, my metabolism goes down to like the equal of what I'd be sleeping, right? So it's not just getting up and moving, but inside the body, sitting up straight, breathing while I'm sitting here, moving. I still don't believe this, but I just read it last week and it just cracks me up. There was a research, I said I don't believe it because it's like I always got to have a second or third research before I believe it, but there was a research where it's like if you would flex every muscle on your body 3 to 5 seconds a day, you wouldn't have a decline in your, whatever you call it, your muscle to fat ratio. And I'm like, that's crazy, but it's interestingly true that it's not that much to be able to just get movement in every part of my body. My dad, when he was getting towards the end there, he was like, I can't raise my arms. I can't raise my arms. I don't understand why my shoulders don't work. I can't raise my arms. And I wanted to say, because you didn't. If you watch little kids, their hands are like this all the time. Their hands are everywhere, right? They can't, they're kind of like the Talladega Nights. It's like, I don't know what to do with my hands right now. But they're moving their hands all the time, everywhere, right? And as we get older, we don't. You'd be surprised how little in a day you raise your arm above your shoulder, right? And then all of a sudden you go, I can't raise my arm anymore. Like I said, your body listens to what you asked it to do. Movement of all kinds throughout the day. Huberman even talks about just even tapping your finger, your toes, or your hands actually wakes the brain up, wakes the body up, and tells it we want movement inside our body. It's even people will say, you have an older person you're taking care of and they have trouble with bowel movements, a lot of them, right? And yeah, I understand that takes place inside the intestine, the movement inside the intestine. But just try this. If you're caring for somebody, take them in the morning and afternoon, move their legs, get them to move their body, get a lot of movement, and watch what happens. The body starts to respond with more blood flow, more circulation, and the right things get around in your body. So movement is inside and outside the body.
Yeah. You said something that I just want to touch on because I know that I've seen a lot of our coaches doing it. But I think we lose it too as we become adults. It becomes more rigid, right? It's back to that thought again. I know I'm the worst at it. My day is very structured. I'm like, this is what we're doing. But those times you go back to being a kid, right? When you expand your imagination again and you're like, I'm going to shoot that hoop or I'm just doing between the legs. It does kind of fire you up a little bit. So I've seen you guys do a lot of stuff in there.
We do that. It's so funny. I've done that with some of our Parkinson's people is that we all use those Keurig cups anymore.
Oh.
So I'm going to say, no more just dropping it in the garbage can. You need to put the garbage can over there and you need to shoot it. And you watch your proprioception and spatial awareness improve as they're just sitting there shooting this and stuff and doing, like you're saying, having fun, gamifying life a little bit, and having a more fun with it. Like eyes, you'll see seniors and we'll say, man, I can hardly see out of the corner of my eye anymore. You haven't done that.
Yeah.
Being an old quarterback, we work all day on our peripheral vision. And we're also, where you're going with your eyes, and you have big eye movements when you're playing sports, things like that. You get older, you're looking at this screen, you're reading these books, you're right here, and then all of a sudden you look over and you go, man, I almost get dizzy when I look to the right or left. You haven't done it.
Yeah.
So gamifying life is a great idea, and trying to get more movement in all areas and challenging yourself is huge.
Yeah. I think we're kind of spoiled here when we're at the Pacific Clinic because we have so many things we
Right.
get to do. But I mean, I've seen you guys do so many things. We have, the one who is a former track athlete. I've seen you throw footballs with him and do sprints and things he used to do. I mean, we have somebody who is from stroke recovery out there playing pickleball.
Sitting in a wheelchair,
sitting
can't
in a
move, and he's
wheelchair.
playing pickleball.
I mean, this is some amazing
beautiful.
stuff.
Talking smack the whole time.
Yeah, of course, always.
He's a superstar.
Always.
He's a great dude.
Yeah. So you talked about it earlier, which was the microbiome. A lot of people don't know what that means, and it kind of ties into our nutrition. And I remember when we were first working through this, we were like, okay, water's so key. Well, so is food. And we're like, well, that's all nutrition.
Right.
So let's talk about kind of the water, the microbiome. I mean, you guys are definitely very good, both of you, at kind of expanding that. I'm a little more particular about what I eat. I try, though. I've done my kombucha and my other things when I have to. But let's talk about what that means.
Well, it's really no different. I mean, first of all, so we're almost, our bodies are almost like a colony of bacteria, and you think, ooh, gross. But the fact is, that's what keeps us healthy, and that's what also can cause us problems if it's not ordered correctly in a lot of ways. And the fact is that but it still comes down to the same thing, challenging. Mm-hmm. Which I'm so good at. I mean, I could eat the exact same thing every day. I don't really care. It's like, and that's not good for you. You have to expand. You have to challenge the body. So really, some of the things that you think of like, wow, that's supposedly so good for you, like some of the greens and stuff, it's because it actually has like a coating on it, almost like a poison to keep animals from eating it. And when you eat it, it's not poison, but it's actually in a way is. It's challenging your body to have to process it. Same with a lot of the different types of berries and things like that. So I think people get too into like, well, what is the hack that's going to change my microbiome? What's the little pill I can take or the little thing I'm going to eat? And there's these new ones like kombucha or something like that. They go, that helps a lot. But expanding, challenging. Mm-hmm. Even Ramiro and I, like we have a vitamin powder, AG1 is one we use, but we don't use one. Every month we switch because we want to keep getting different things in our system. And so it's fermented foods. I mean, we can make a whole show on how to really expand your microbiome. There's all these different things to do, but it's challenging. So when you go get your salads, get different vegetables every time, or a lot of the different times. Change up. Get away from processed foods. Get into things that processed foods, your body doesn't know what it is. It's like you're eating partially homogenated oil, and your body's going, I have no idea what this is, but just store it for later. He might need it. So it just doesn't understand. So getting whole, natural food. So our diet that we push to the families and home teams is get natural. And we've watched people, again, we've had people like with GFRs. I mean, their total kidney failure down to like 3 on a GFR, and the doctor's saying they're done. And we've seen them live, not just live, but thrive for months and months because of some of these things we're talking about that could naturally let the body improve. Yeah. So microbiome to me is hugely important, and then also, like always, gets too specific of what can take place because there is no specific. It's get outside of the specific, So and then simple things like you want to talk about a hack is that if Ramiro gets 36 grams of fiber a day and you get 25 grams of fiber a day, you have a 70% less chance of getting Alzheimer's. Fiber, I'm talking about beans, oats.
Yes.
You're talking about stuff that you can just eat. You don't have to go get anything different. Doesn't have to be expensive, but just that's a hack. That would be a hack that I would say is phenomenal. But that's how you, and plus that's a prebiotic. So you have to have that for your biotics to grow. So, simple things like that to get your system going.
Well, and we've used the word, I think Ramiro was the one that brought it up first, which is that intentional. You also talk a lot about being intentional with what you eat. Meaning, It's okay to have a cookie if you want a cookie, but be intentional with it.
Yeah.
I'm eating this cookie. I did this good today, or whatever. Have a purpose behind eating the cookie. Don't just mindlessly eat a cookie and be like, oh man, I just ate 8 more cookies for no reason.
What happened to the Oreos?
Yeah, right. That's the whole point. Like with me, you talk about addictions. Like people have addictions. For me, like a cookie is 10 cookies.
Yes.
It's just
Yeah.
all there is to it. So you know what?
A
About
brownie
once-
is a pan of brownies.
Right. So about once every like month or two, I'm going to do those 10 cookies.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to take a long walk afterwards, and maybe I even cook them with organic maple syrup instead, or I made some good adjustments. But we're not saying don't enjoy.
You make your own cookies?
Oh yeah, I make good ones.
Oh, do you? I've never had them. Have you had his cookies? I don't
Not
know.
yet.
I'm good.
Questionable.
I get the experimental stuff. Like, here, drink this. What is it? Don't worry about it. Okay.
I only got
mushrooms.
like
I like it.
two types of cookies I can make though.
That actually flashes me back to the time he bought the new mushroom powder drink, and he's like, "Come try it. It has lion's mane and all this stuff." And I'm like, "What am I drinking?" It actually was really good though.
It is good.
It was really delicious. So sleep. Before we get into the last one, which is purpose, sleep. I mean, it's pretty basic.
Hold on, wait, back up. We forgot one then. Water.
Well, water, but I said it. Part of nutrition.
Yeah,
yes.
I just
water,
quickly.
Yes.
And it's just fluid. It's like, but water is so important, and you need to make sure you're getting a lot of water. And when you're taking care of elderly people, again, we're talking about home teams. I can't remember the stat. It's a crazy stat, but how many the level of where they're entirely dried out. I mean, they are dehydrated, and people don't know it. And you think, well, give them a water bottle and you think it's enough. It is really, really important. And we cheat. Ramiro and I cheat because I'm not a big water drinker. For me to drink water, I just guzzle it. I can't sit there like you guys and have a water bottle all day. It doesn't work for me. So we just guzzle. I have like 2 glasses in the morning. I have a couple times I have glasses. And then we take one and we put lemon juice in it. We put a little bit of organic maple syrup.
Magic juice
Yeah.
right here.
We put cayenne pepper, which is one on the internet. But then we also add our greens in there. And that, I'll drink 2 of those. That's 100 ounces.
Yeah.
So you got to find your ways of getting around it. But water is huge.
Yeah.
Fluid is huge.
And that's where, like, those little hacks, we'd come to me, what's the problem, especially with the runs? Man, cramps, my feet, this and that. Well, you're not drinking enough water. I was drinking a lot of water, but even that, something that you showed me is Himalayan salt, Celtic salt. It's like, oh, you got to get the water into your body. Oh, I didn't know that because it wasn't working. So now, like you said, we do 2 or 3 of these a day, and it's like.
Yeah, Celtic salt and table salt are 2 entirely different things. And Celtic salt actually is water attractive. It brings the water into your cells, is what he's saying. And then also, you going with the maple syrup, now you're getting potassium and magnesium. And anyway, enough about water. But water's important.
Water is important. So
Fluid.
Sleep, I think is important. Most people are like, sleep. I know I'm supposed to get so much, but what does that mean? Why did we add sleep to the 7 essentials?
Because it is that essential. I mean, you like when I was really, really sick, I still don't know. Like I couldn't. I was having seizures. I was having these problems, but I also wasn't sleeping. And I don't know if the sickness was causing the sleep problems or sleep was causing sickness problems. I mean, it's kind of back and forth. And sleep architecture, if you're not getting sleep, you'll be kind of cranky. But then you can actually get to where you're actually hallucinating. You can get all kinds of problems going on. And you have no idea. Again, we're talking about planting the goat heads. Not getting sleep is like not having water on the good plants. And so bad things start growing. And you got to have the sleep. So sleep architecture is huge. And we have been highly successful with kind of a program we've developed ourselves and along just learning from a lot of the great pros out there, but how to set your circadian rhythm, how to set that architecture. And then we developed our apps, with Tune Infuse, where we have an incredible, I mean, it's just incredible. You sit there, you put it on, you hear the breathing, which is, I love this, is like if you go to any ocean in the world, the waves come in between 8 and 12 seconds. It's fun. Just go try it anywhere. 8 and 12 seconds, which is happens to be the perfect rhythm of breathing. So it's kind of like God doing the ocean and we're doing the same. And I think John Hopkins did this research that doing the perfect breathing of about 10 seconds creates what they call a negative loop in the heart. Not negative as in bad, but negative as in reducing. And so what happens is your blood pressure, they found that you could lower your blood pressure better than or at least as good as the blood pressure medicines by doing this breathing. So we have it in an app, but it's really cool. When you're breathing, it feels on the app like it's going around your head every time you breathe. And so you focus on that breath going around your head, and you're getting the frequencies that are good for your brain to calm down. And in our app, you can actually listen to music while you're doing it, which is fun. But you do that in the evening. You do our program during the day, and a lot of people use that app throughout the day. And all of a sudden, we have people coming and saying, "Man, I haven't." We'll have people say, "I haven't slept for years," and then they're like, "Man, I'm sleeping all night." People are saying, "I'm not on any sleeping medicines anymore." You know, so many people come in and be like, "You know, I'm taking 50 milligrams of melatonin and it's not working." You know, John Hopkins, a sleep expert there, said if 5 milligrams isn't working, 50 is not going to work. It's like, you know, everyone thinks just more and more and more. Fact is, melatonin does work for some people if you're low in melatonin. You know, so there's all these things like that. But the truth is, it's right inside our system if we just allow to build the sleep architecture. So sleep is huge for healing. And if you're going to be a caregiver, you got to get your sleep too. You've got to be able to if you're going to care for anybody else, you've got to be able to get your sleep architecture solid.
One thing I want to add to that is, you know, like listening through these, you really can't separate one from the other. They all have to work together. So the sleep part, you know, the today in the culture, the atmosphere that we're in, it's about the grind. You know, it's about the hustle. Like I used to pride myself, 4 hours, that's all I need. And it was like, yeah, that's all I needed to barely operate.
Right.
But it, like, don't count the 6 cups of coffee that I was drinking throughout the day just to maintain. And it was like, how silly. You know, but it was not understanding, not being able to have these conversations, not really knowing what was going on, not having the intention, you know, watching Netflix in the middle of the night, you know, bombs going off, and I'm wondering why I'm waking up in the middle going, oh man, what's going on? You know, or going to sleep watching the news, you know, scared, you know, mindless, and you're like, I had no plan, nothing designed, nothing on purpose, nothing intentional, but now having these conversations like, do I really want to do it that way? I know better. Can I do better? Let's just try it. Let's just test it. And then through the process, you realize like, it's working. Like, this works.
I will never fight the sleep one. I like my sleep.
Well, you know, the other one that cracks me up is we're dial watchers now. I have it on my watch.
The Oura rings.
Yeah. I mean, people wake up and they're like, did I sleep well? Did I sleep well? And we do that all day long and trying to get away from being dial watchers and actually, hey, it's okay. You woke up a couple times and sleep. Just let it relax. Yeah. You're going to get your hours. You're going to get, well, I only got 6.5 today, and you told me I had to have 8. You're good.
Your body said you're good.
Just keep going and keep working on it and relax. Don't get so keyed up. I mean, because people are like, you know, I don't sleep well and I got to sleep. I'm trying to sleep right now. Like, you know, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, I think it's more about creating that routine than anything else, right? Instead of looking at the numbers and stuff, just say, just get in your routine. You can kind of, it'll all work itself out. Don't worry about it.
We found, and Ramiro's seen it, when we do the oxygen contrast therapy. If you let them watch the dial, so they're watching that. They will affect everything that's going on by the fact that they're watching. And it took me a while to realize that is neurofeedback.
Yeah.
It's actually neurofeedback, and you're causing a bad loop. And so we really teach people not to watch and to feel it and use what I like to say is more biofeedback. We actually feel it, and we touch. Like a lot of our breathing, we'll touch while we're breathing. And it's just a much better system to relax and just let things flow.
Yeah. All right, the missing piece, I mentioned it before, which is purpose. I mean, it was the first thing that you kind of hit on in your story, how important purpose is. And I've seen it, I mean, you see it more than I do working with clients. I know that it helps me kind of set my day and my tone. What's my purpose? So let's talk about that more.
Yeah, it is the grand poopah of the
grand
poopah. and of life, you know, it's like whenever your life is falling apart, you will either have thought you lost your purpose, you thought you failed at your purpose, and like I said last week, it comes down first with purpose is to forgive yourself and to start anew. Every day starting anew is part of being able to even see purpose. You know, you got to be able to see it from where you're at. But purpose is why we're on this earth. It's like, well, what purpose? Well, I actually think it's caring, is learning to care and learning to be part of contributing to life. But when you watch people, I use my mom as an example, when she was going through the thing with her kidneys where she the doctor came in and said, listen, she's only got about 4 days to live. We're not going to do anything anymore. And I said, and he told her that, which really made me mad because she didn't need to hear that. And he's not God. He can't make that prediction anyway. So I walked him outside and I said, first of all, you're lucky she can't hear you. She doesn't hear very well. And second of all, you don't have a right to say that because, you know, she's going to determine and God's going to determine what's going on in her life right now. I walked in there and all Mom had heard was, she goes, am I going to die? And my answer was, not today. Because I knew today she wasn't. She was stable. I said, not today. That's all she needed to hear. Not today. So she said, what are we going to do? I said, well, we're going to work on getting you weight bearing again. We're going to get you breathing again. We're going to get this oxygen back in you. And, you know, the doctor, I went, after I gave Mom a kind of a talk, but the last of the talk was, so what am I on this earth for? That's what Mom wanted to know. I said, I don't know. We're going to find out. You got people that need you. You got things that are going to have to happen. I don't even know what it is, but can't you wait to find out? And she started, you can see her start going, yep, you know, my granddaughter needs me for this, and I need to just encourage that one person. You can just see like starting to click in her head of the things that she wanted to do. And when I turned around, the doctor said something to me, and he said, well, I really don't think she's going to live to you know, she's 80. No, that's what he goes, she's 89. And I said, Doc, you know who wants to be 90? Is an 89-year-old. You know, you're writing it off because you're 40. She wants to be 90. And until she decides she doesn't want to be on this earth, or God decides she's not going to be on this earth, it's our job to help her find her purpose. So everyone writes these people off like, well, they have no more purpose. They have so much purpose. And so we teach people, like even in our morning routines, and Mom was incredible. I go over there like 4:30 in the morning. She's always asleep, which I always love. That she's asleep, and I'd walk in. And I go, Mom. She'd go, oh, there you are. I've been awake all night. And she'd say, Steve, sit down. We've got a problem. And she'd start everything off with. It was like just her way. And then she'd say, I really need to do something for blank and blank somebody. I've got to reach out. This person's really disturbed. I've got to do something about this. I'm like, okay, Mom. She'd be like, or with you guys, she'd be like, okay, we're really trying to figure out how we're going to make popcorn balls for Christmas. Yeah. These were her purposes, though.
Right.
And she started to develop around this concept of I still have purpose, and she still had reason to be on this earth. Yeah. And she thrived. He said 4 to 8 days. 10 days later, she met me at the end of the driveway walking down because I came back from Philadelphia. When we came back from Philadelphia, and she was raring to go. She had purpose, and I think that's what we take that and roll that back to us. That's at 89. But us, when you're sick, when you've been through crud in your life and everything seems wrong, and you think everybody in the world hates you, you know, and they might, but you have to pick up and say, okay, what is my purpose? What can I do for people? What can I do for anyone? Yeah. And you find that one thing at a time, like I said last week about a lady at Walmart or whatever it is, you find that one thing at a time to find purpose again, and then watch. You know, Ramiro and I have a saying, we always say, what's in our path? If something's in your path, you have to act on it. It's tough sometimes. You're like, oh man, I didn't really want to have to act on this today, but I've got to act on it. And so, because why? Because that's my purpose. Yeah. Is I need to be able to care for other people. And when you start getting that, it's kind of its own kind of addictiveness.
It is addictive.
And it grows and it grows, and like that again, those goose heads are getting pushed out because you get all these nice
goat
green
heads, one or the other.
Oh, yeah.
You were so
those
close.
two. Those
I'm
two.
sticking with goose heads.
Well, speaking from, I mean, I was blessed enough to be able to go over and help your mom. We talked about that kind of last episode. For me, what was interesting was I was a caregiver coming in, right? I'm that helper coming in to kind of give support. And when you first asked me to do it, I was like, okay, we need to keep her going. Like, we'll come up with something. So each time I'd go visit her, I'd be like, okay, what could we do to kind of give her purpose and help her kind of find that? But what was interesting was pretty soon she had found her own purpose. I was no longer doing that. She's like, we're making popcorn balls and we're going to make cookies. I'm making this thing for this person, doing all that. So it was interesting, that little bit of push for me. But then what I was finding was she had given me purpose. I was like fighting to get over there. She'd be like, no, don't worry about me. You had a long day. And I'd be like, you let me come over there because you're taking my purpose away.
Right.
You know, so it's just interesting how it's this really amazing thing that happens in your life where you think, here, I'm here for this person, but in the end, they're actually giving you purpose.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you feel that quite regularly when you go in there and you're like, okay, when they're first starting, you're like pouring all your energy in this person, you're trying to give them purpose, and then all of a sudden, I'm sure you see this light bulb click and you see them have their own purpose.
That's the, like you said, the grand poobah of all of it. So, it's every one of these in their order, they're important, but to me, it's like the priority of it all. I mean, it's the philosophical question from all time. Why are we here? What is the purpose of everything? What is the meaning of life? So it's like this grand question that's been asked throughout. And I believe we get confused. We get everything mixed up now today because we confuse purpose with passion. What's my passion? That's the word today. What's my passion? Man, throw passion out your window. It's like, even understanding the purpose, I didn't know this was my purpose. Steve asked me to believe in him, and Steve asked me to have faith, and Steve asked me to trust. And all I knew that everything that I had gotten to do my way wasn't working. And it was like, okay, I'm going to trust that somehow there's something greater than me and something more than me that wants something here, and I'm not here by accident. And it's like, I'm going to trust that I'm going to find my purpose if I bring my passion, if I bring who I am. And what I told Steve was, hey, I don't have the degrees. I'm not certified. I don't know this. I don't know that. That's not what I need. I need you to be who you are. I need you to learn this. I need you to understand this. But when you go in there, I need you to do what you do. And like you mentioned it, the first thing I do is I clear off my desk, take everything out, all the space. I put on my reading glasses, not because I need them to see, but because it only allows me to focus on this little space and blurs everything out. And the first thing is, why are we here? And then I just listen. And then I just let you talk. And as you're talking, I'm not trying to answer your question because I don't know. I'm not trying to put myself in your story because I don't know. But man, that release of going, there's somebody that's listening, there's somebody that cares, and they'll tell me the basic, and I know the first 2 or 3 things they're telling me is just the rehearsed story that they know, but then you dig deeper, and what I find is they lost their purpose, they lost the meaning,
Right.
and back over and over, they'll come back and they'll ask themselves, why am I doing this? I don't have that answer for you, but I know you're still here, and as long as you're here, it's your job to do your best, it's my job to do my best, and we allow, God to do His, and everything works together, and through that process you will find your purpose, whether it's something big or something small.
Right.
But man, that just carries you throughout.
And the thing that we keep touching on is like we haven't really talked about Home Team's app, but the app is amazing because it helps you coordinate all the people that want to come see the loved one, all the people that are going to help with doing the yard or doing the dishes or being a nurse, whatever it is. It helps coordinate that. It saves a ton of money for the family to use the app. It is free if you can't afford it. So it's not like it's a major cost of any way, shape, or form. But in that app, there's all the organization, there's all the fun that takes place with that. But there's also the inspiration to do what we're talking about. Because you're going to care for somebody, you need to have a mentor. Mm-hmm. Well, you have the mentor in the app. You have people telling you how they care for people, what they're doing. You have the companionship. So you have your home team, but you're part of home teams. And there's other teams and other people are doing it, and be able to get that information, access that information right within your app, be able to, it even translates into different languages, the videos do. So you can have somebody speak Spanish, someone English, and they're still working and helping each other. But that, I've said it before, like when we started the home teams research, the number one thing that people said why they don't have people at home was they were intimidated. Mm-hmm. And if I would have taken you and you're starting as a coach and I said, okay, you got it, just go do it, you'd be like, man, I don't really know what I'm doing. There's a lot of nuances. I told you, you're going to be 2,000 hours into the training before you really understand it. And it was probably 2,000, 2,500 hours. That mentorship of having somebody there saying, hey, I got you. We got this. And you're actually doing a great job. And yeah, you made a mistake, and so did I one time, and laugh about it. And, as a caregiver, you're going to make mistakes. And be able to laugh about it and know that somebody else says, yeah, I've made that mistake too. But that is a big part of the app, is the information that sits in there, resides in there, that's always accessible, and it's always being updated. There's constantly new stuff going in there that's telling you more of how to be a caregiver. But I think it still comes down to, like everything we're talking about, the 7 essentials, if there was an 8, essential or
Coming soon.
No, we're not changing.
It resides in the fact that it is a team.
Mm-hmm.
That you need to have. No man is an island type concept. Is that you need to have a team to be able to be successful in finding your own purpose, and in purpose of life.
Yeah. And one thing you kind of touch on with the inspiration side of it, but my favorite piece is the educational component that we're able to bring to you, because we just talked about a lot of information. But then how does a loved one or even a helper who's, just wanting to help a family, how do they apply that information? How do they take and learn how to do the thought? How do they get started?
Especially if they can't do it themselves.
Yes, exactly. So I think that's the most important component that we're bringing. We have those educational pieces that come in and say, how can you do it yourself? How do you then spread it to somebody else? What do we mean by nutrition and microbiome? How can you change that for somebody? I think all these little extra tidbits really help people out, because we think, and we always say we're not the experts. We think we know a lot, but there's still a lot to learn. Imagine the people that don't know any of this, that don't even know the first step to take and are so overwhelmed to have that ability. I just think is going to be so amazing for people. So amazing.
And that's the part with the other part, the asterisk element, the emotional part, the emotional support. In war, only the people that were there really know what you went through. I will never be able to understand my wife, what she went through giving birth to 4 kids, no matter what. I can read all the books, watch all the movies. I will never understand it because I didn't go through it. Well, with home teams, having that team of people going through there, I believe the bond that you guys share together now is deeper and more meaningful than it ever was because of this process of going through and taking care of his mom than anything else before. And there's nothing else that can give you that. And the only thing that can compare is the people that were there. And if you weren't there, you didn't live it, you didn't experience it, you won't ever know. But with this, everybody that's involved is going to know and is going to share, and you don't have to be alone.
Yeah, that's very important. I love it. Well, thanks for joining us today, Ramiro. It was really great to hear your story and kind of hear your, perspective on the 7 essential elements and how you've been working with clients. And as always, it's fun with chatting back and forth with you. And the grand poopah was my favorite saying of the day. Last time it was Calvary.
It wasn't the goose heads?
Yeah, the goose heads. I don't know. That was pretty close. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Home Teams Talk. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel or find us on your favorite podcast platform.